Captain's Log, Subdate 200601.3. As we've approached a near-toxic area of the ocean, I've reduced the speed to channel the power into the shields by rerouting it, of course. The computer estimates it'll keep us safe, but it will reduce the safety of the pod upon exiting the toxic environment. An analysis may need to happen. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we have a rather fascinating ongoing investigation I'd very much like to look into and address. Before we start though, I'm streaming on Omegon Plays tonight. There is a new video on Moisky Live, and I've decided, because I want to do this maybe once, I'm going to shill Teespring, cause reasons, and I recently updated it. If you're at all interested in supporting the channel, it is linked down below. So the subject of today is a woman called Cynthia Carolyn Black from Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. The case in question can be traced all the way back to 2004, because this actually involves another person called Glenora Reckford Delahaye. Glenora Reckford Delahaye passed away in March 2004. How Cynthia Black fits into this we will get to soon. When Glenora Reckford Delahaye passed away, she was almost 97. Somewhat oddly though, her social security checks were being cashed in for 15 years. This has been confirmed by Cynthia Carolyn Black, who has said that she used the money to pay for the mortgage of her Dillsburg home, which is somewhat peculiar because she's moved around a fair few times, and we'll get to some of that momentarily. Add to this that Glenora Reckford Delahaye was found in a somewhat unusual coffin, aka a freezer. DNA testing has confirmed that the body within a freezer was in fact Glenora Reckford Delahaye. Eco-friendly, I'm sure. Police had been notified of a body being in a freezer last year on February 7th. They're not naming who said that, and that's fine. The police have said that Cynthia, upon finding her grandmother dead, decided to move her to a freezer before moving, which has been confirmed by Black, the freezer 3 years later to Dillsburg from Ardmore, Delaware County. Road trip? Public records show that Cynthia Black lived with her grandmother in Ardmore before moving to Dillsburg in 2009, which supports the previous comments. A year later, Cynthia Black was arrested. A day after a warrant for her arrest was issued, with the trial being set at a $50,000 unsecured bail. That means that a bond is created. The accused is liable for breaching the bond's conditions, and Cynthia Black has to sign a contract or agree to go to court. I had to look that up because I didn't understand what unsecured bail meant, all of which indicated bail bonds. So I'm going to go with that. If I'm wrong, please do correct me. Cynthia Black claims that the family needed the grandmother's social security income, which is why they kept her hidden in a freezer in the basement. There are charges for that, we'll get to them momentarily. But before that, I want to get to the neighbours' comments about her moving and the way she treated Holmes. For the sake of it, the neighbours are unnamed. For fear of retribution, they did point out that Cynthia Black and her family were not friendly. They kept to themselves and did not like conversations with outsiders. They'd also indicated that Cynthia Black's garden was overgrown, and that when they moved out they stripped the house, leaving it as a skeleton of wood plaster and more plaster, taking the copper pipes, toilets, essentially everything but the wood and plaster, which would include the chain link fence that prevented the dogs from escaping. I'm not entirely sure why, but sure, this is a bit of an odd one, I'll give you that. Not as odd as putting a body in a freezer and cashing social security checks for 15 years. I had initially surmised this would be a state-level investigation, but then state welfare law is a bit different to federal. For example, legal citations for welfare fraud, the penalties would include paying full restitution of the overpaid benefits. That sentence would include community service, probation or incarceration, pay costs and fines to the court, and be disqualified for a period of time from public assistance benefits. And there are obviously then boundaries depending on the number of offences you've committed that will determine how many times or how long you are disqualified from the programme of public assistance benefits. But this particular case is unusual because it includes a body, and we don't know yet if they're charging her with that person's death or with desecration. But then one has to then go with, what are they more likely to get a conviction with? And I think we can all agree here, fraud is at the top. Federal is more likely to get a sentence, something which I'd actually posited on Twitter, with many replying to me, federal fraud, desecration of a body, federal obstruction of justice in commission of a separate felony, failure to report, accomplice to murder after the fact, and federal wire fraud. There were more, and what I love is the engagement with this particular tweet, because in all honesty, the engagement of this I'm truly grateful of. And also it helps me then try and locate suitable punishments, which is something I'd like to do on this channel. I'd very much like to then evaluate cases and introduce what the state, federal, county, country laws along with sentencing guidelines. This is far too early, of course, and we can't possibly guess too far until we know what the full scope of the charges are. But it does seem likely fraud is going to be top of the list. So when it comes to federal law, if it is for the sake of it fraud, the sentence comes from the court, which may order a large fine calculated, which is based upon the amount of money they have fraudulently obtained, and or a maximum period of incarceration of up to 25 years. It's possible tax evasion could be considered for this as well, but we'll get to that maybe another time. Also to consider, under 42 U.S.C. Section 408, a conviction for this crime can result in a federal prison term up to 10 years, which is for Social Security fraud, which is a federal law that makes it a crime for anyone to misuse government-issued benefits intended for someone else. According to the website of the SSA Offices of Inspector General, the OIG, it is a crime to fail to notify the SSA of the death of a beneficiary and continue to receive and cash the checks of the deceased person. That prison term is up to 10 years as well as a fine of up to $250,000, which in addition the defendant will be made personally liable for the misused funds, meaning they will be responsible for paying the money they stole. So I do firmly believe that while it is utterly insane to hide a body in the freezer, I don't think they're going to get her on that. Therefore it will become a federal offence, and the state one will be considered lesser for the sake of the conviction, unless their intention is, and this is also possible, they make her serve time for the fraud, and then upon serving it, hammer her for the body, which wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Now with this, I'm very much interested to know what you think of Cynthia Carolyn Black, and what she has done. My view is, the sentencing guidelines are actually fairly accurate, and if this is where more than likely she will go, prison and her are going to become very good friends. My sentence for the sake of it, by the way, yeah, I'm inclined to believe that this is actually fairly good. 10 years and up to $250,000, depending on how much she took, full restitution, pay the whole lot back. Good luck with that. And then go to Titan and serve out your days in hard labour. Tell me what you think about this in the comments down below. If I don't see you tonight on Omegon, please have a fantastic Monday. And thank you all for listening.